I am Kyle May. I'm an account executive over at Paperless Parts. Prior to working as an account executive at Paperless Parts, I worked with Arch Medical in the medical industry doing complex instrumentation and implants. I worked there as everything between a project engineer and an estimator up to an account manager for about 7 years. So, spent a lot of time, previously working in Excel spreadsheets prior to finding Paperless Parts on the estimating side of the house. We're going to give a quick demo here of paperless parts and the features in the platform that I found really helpful whenever I was quoting jobs in the medical industry. Yeah, we'll jump right into it. First, we're starting here in our email. This is a typical RFQ that I would receive from my customers that list out, hey, part numbers and quantities that they wanted, along with the individual part files. Sometimes you may receive them in zip. But within paperless parts, you can forward these directly over to your account. So now I'm just going to go in, forward into my paperless parts account, and that is Paperless Precision, and hit send. And the purpose of this is so that we can quickly get information into your paperless parts account and start to triage the email along with the individual quote line items. So if I hop over here into paperless parts, you'll see this RFQ has came in. You do get the subject line of the email underneath. That way you're not going through and searching, what email was what. It's pretty clear here on the subject line. But this view that you're seeing here, this is your quotes dashboard. You can filter this many kind of different ways, but just high level information that you can see here, account, contact, if you've got specific salespeople that are tied to specific accounts that already have those relationships built, we can auto assign those. Scrolling over, you can see statuses of the individual line items in quote. So, if you had to go out and get outsourced anodized or outsourced DLC coding requests, or, maybe it was, 455 or 465 material that you don't typically work with, and you had to go out and get it requested. This is where you can check these off to make sure you've done your research and your homework. Scrolling over, we can jump right into this quote. And as we jump in here, you'll notice a couple things. First, we've got some pretty high level quote header information here. Things like quote due date, expiration, you can set priorities. You'll also see here that we have an RFQ receive date and time. So this is when the email was originally sent to me from the customer. And then we've got a quote start date, which is whenever I forwarded into the system or whenever I created the quote. You'll see these line items are purple here. This is anytime you see purple in the platform, this is our built-in AI that we're using to do objective tasks. I think, administrative, typing in part numbers, typing in dates received. If this was from a realistic customer that already lived in my account, it would already pull in their contact and their company information. So you can see here we bring in like a CRM card. So, order revenue, quote sent last 30 days. You can even have tactical or strategic notes built into this to democratize with the team. Things like, hey, they don't like the NRE fees broken out into a separate line item. They want them baked into the unit cost. You also have a contact card. This is specific to that buyer, not just in the account. So you can see, hey, is this a buyer that frequently orders from us? Or hey, if I quoted, 30 line items in the last day or last month and I haven't won anything. So you can get with that buyer and kind of understand what the approach is or what they're looking for that you may be missing. Scrolling down, you'll see that we do save a copy of the email. So always nice to be able to go back and look at that original email versus, some kind of phone game interpreting the expectations of what the quote is. And then we do forward in the supporting files as well. So these were attachments that lived in the email. I didn't have to download them or re-upload them. They were forwarded in at the same time as the email. So now I've got my high level quote information set up. I understand what account that I'm working with, what the expectation is from the customer. Next step is to go in and start organizing what the request is. So I can go in here, I'm seeing purple on my bulk create line item. This is another way that we're eliminating those admin or data entry tasks. So I can create line items. And what we're doing here is building the bones of our quote. So, I've got line items here with nothing associated with it. And we're seeing that we have matches. So we're looking across individual line items, we're looking in the supporting files, and we're understanding what goes where so that you don't have to manually go in and match these files up. So I've got 3 matches here. I can quickly add to the line item. I see that I've got a zip file. I can unzip here as well. And while this is spinning, what this is doing is it's going into those PDFs and our AI is scraping relevant information. It's not just, unzipping the file by itself. So once this step file finishes, we'll be able to add this in here as our primary file and then start breaking apart our BOM. So I can add this to line items. And now we've got our file sorted, but hey, I've got a bunch of individual component prints that have relevant information on it for those components. It may be customer specs that I need to meet, specific outsourcing requirements. So I'm going to go into this line item and start quoting it. And in that process, it will also allow us to arrange our files. So going through, we have revision, we're pulling off of the print. We have the description that we're pulling off the print. Scrolling down, I can see my BOM breakout right here. And for, medical assemblies, this was extremely helpful. Seems like everything's got, whether even if it's just a drill, tap, or reamer, it's got some kind of barrel driver that's on the end of it. There always seems to be more than one component, even with something as simple as a pedicle screw. So automatically breaking out the BOM based off of the step file to allow me to understand, what's going to go where, what process that I'm going to use for which components fast is really nice and really helpful. The other aspect of this is the purchase component. So um, if the part number already lives in your purchase component database, whenever we upload this file, it will search across that database and already flag things as purchase components. If it's a new purchase component that you haven't bought before from like MasterCard, then you can very easily go in and add those to your list. But to finish organizing our files, I'm going to go in here and edit our BOM. And this allows us to, maybe I want to make this thing in a different order. Maybe I don't want to follow necessarily the assembly steps that they have listed out. I can go in here and arrange this as needed, move it back and forth. But once again, we're seeing here at the top that we have 21 quote files matching 21 parts. So I can add files. And now all of my component parts also have their supporting PDFs, and I have no files left unorganized. So I can hit check and publish. And all my files are organized. My PDFs are where they should be. I've got part numbers, names, and descriptions on each individual component. And I can go ahead and start quoting. For this demo purposes, I'm going to go into the trigger here. I'm going to highlight it, and I can go in and assign a process and material. So, within my shop, this is going to be a CNC mill part. These templates or processes that we have built out are fully customizable to how your shop typically handles parts. If you've got, a high volume of counter torques that you guys do, very frequently, you could have a counter torque process that lists out the individual steps that you typically take there. Same thing with a pedicle screw, drill, those standard types of instruments that live across the board that every customer has. So I'm going to go in here to CNC milling. I'm going to assume 17.4 because most of my parts are 17.4. I'm going to apply changes. So what this is going to do is it's going to start looking at this part dynamically as if we were going to run it across our mill, and it's going to start bringing things to our attention that um, influence how we would process this part. One other thing that I do want to highlight here that I feel like is extremely beneficial for medical with the amount of revision changes that go on in the space, the amount of X1s to A releases that you do during an alpha launch. It's really nice to be able to go in here and understand, hey, have I quoted this part before? Maybe it's the exact same geometry and they just ginned up it and changed it to a new part number, or is this something that we've got a similar geometry for? So, the previous generation was a little bit different, completely different part number, but you don't have to remember that off the top of your head. We will surface it in this matching parts library for you to be able to go and grab that information out of. Close it in. Before we get into the individual router, I want to make sure you understand where we're getting those buckets of information from. So you do get a CAD viewer within Paperless Parts. You can rotate it around. You can change the color of it to default. I know some of the models come in, they have all the colors on there from the marketing, whether that be DLC, or gold. So it can make it hard to see some details. You can change the color. You get a good idea of roughly how big this part is by the bounding box. You can take individual measurements if needed. But over here on the left-hand side, you'll see that we have milling features called out. So I've got holes here. I've got pockets that are going to be machined. So these are flat face pockets. And then I've got some simple drilled holes. The rest of this we consider to be 3D surface geometry, and you'll see that bucket whenever we go back to the next tab. Within here, we also have milling warnings. So these are DFM warnings that are customized to your shop. So think, for, a radius that you got to put in the bottom of a part that's greater than 4 times the diameter of your tool. Um, really easy to surface that kind of information. And this is customized during the onboarding process. So I can see I've got some fillets here. I've got a through hole cavity. So, maybe I want to slot that after it's drilled or drill it before it's slotted. Up to you on how you process, but it gives you that information pushed to the front. The other part of this, models are great. That's, 30% of understanding, what the requirements are to make this part and how you're going to process it. The other part of that is in the PDF. So we can very easily go in here and through requirements review, understand what is or what isn't a fit for my shop based on, the biggest diameter that's there, the longest length, think customer specifications as well. So if there's an ASTM spec that's listed out on there, we can go in very easily, create a rule and flag that to you over here on the right-hand side. So we're seeing, remove all burrs on this part. I can add a CNC deburr operation, or I can say, hey, this is not applicable. This also allows you to go in there and discuss that with your internal teammates if you need to for more junior estimators. Within here, we can also auto assign people to do certain tasks. So if, X15TN is not a material you typically work with, every single time you see X15TN on a print or 420, you want to make sure your outsourcing agent goes out and gets a quote. You can very easily set a rule in here, hey, anytime that I see X15, anytime that I see X15, I want, Courtney, my outsourced purchase manager, to go out and get a quote. So whenever I create this rule, it will automatically flag to her the moment this PDF is uploaded. No more having to go in, understand what the requirements are, and then delegate from there. The minute it's uploaded, she'll be tagged in to go do her action item from there. So now we've analyzed the model, we've analyzed the print, we understand what the total requirements are. If there's any dimensions that may be troublesome for my shop or any specs that I need to make sure that I'm meeting. So I just wanted to round back base on here on the milling features. So these buckets of information that I was talking about and how we're dissecting this part geometrically will feed straight into this next section that we're talking about, which is our processes. So here we've got material. This is based on the bounding box size of the part. So we get a good rough idea of what we need. And this would be linked into your ERP if you have an ERP integration. So no more having to go hunt down through a big list. We can surface that up to you pretty quickly. And going into here, you can see that I have all of the operations that I need to complete this part from saw all the way to shipping prep in the form of a router or a work order. And I can always go in and change the order of operations. And now we're going to go into this milling op here. So don't want to necessarily pay attention to the runtime that's calculated. I want to make sure that you understand the inputs that we're putting in here to get to those numbers. So think about those buckets of information that I shown on the CAD model. This is where those buckets live. So you'll see we have starting workpiece volume here. We have total part volume, total volume removed, and then we're breaking that total volume removed into things like roughing volume, 3D surface volume, finish thickness, and putting a consistent metal removal rate to them so that you can always set your floor of, hey, I know I always need to be above this number, or you can set your ceiling, which is, hey, this is the slowest this part will ever run in my shop. I know I need to be below this. So it keeps you from losing your shirt or overbidding at the same time. We also have the variables in here for the drilled, tapped, counterbore, countersink holes. So you come up with a holistic time, but it's just those different buckets of information that we're grabbing off the geometry of the part and applying that metal removal rate to them. So I can save changes here, and you'll see we still got a 0. That's so that we make sure that we walk through how we got to this number. But you can always go in and anything in blue, override it. I'll put 5 minutes in there, and you will get a audit trail of who changed it, when they changed it, and what the original calculated value was. So, and that's true for anything that you see in blue here. Scrolling down, now we get into our costing. So, for this part specifically, I've got inside processes. I don't have any outside processes. Those be completely different markups. We got material, no purchase components. And with the templates, you can dictate whether it's customer dependent, whether it's a type of work dependent, your pricing strategy for those items. So, this would be part of the template, but I'll put in a general markup. I'll also put in a customer markup, and I'll do a inside service markup. So now, based on my company, these are the typical margins that we try to achieve, whether it's striker work or on our general, and then for our inside work, an additional 10% on top of that. We can very easily go in here and change this. I know a lot of the instrumentation out there, you can cost it at whatever you want, but the customer can only stand so much, like a counter torque. There's kind of a standard set price for that. Same thing with a pedicle screw, plus or minus 10, 20%. So you know what you're trying to hit here. I know that I want to be, say $50. So I can very easily go in, change my margin to achieve that, um, price. So I'll land it at 62. I'm good with that. I can take a look at my total markup and my profit margin on this job, and then go into the final step, which is adding in your FAIs. Maybe there's a PPAP that you have to complete for that specific customer, and you want to charge for it. You want to make sure you're being covered there. So this is where that would live, and it would just be default built in. And you have drop downs here. If it's something special outside the range of what you typically do, you can go in here and change that blue once again. So I'm going to change this to 50, and you'll still maintain that audit trail and what the original calculated value was. But that's a lot of the features that, I used whenever I was using paperless parts that I felt like there was a lot of benefit in, specifically the BOM builder aspect, specifically being able to break down the parts on the PDF and understand what the requirements were. and the auto ingest, because there's a lot of times where you'll get sent a packet of 15 or 20 instruments or parts that you have to quote all at one time. And half of the battle is just understanding what you do have and what you don't have. So being able to do that quickly in the platform is very handy. All right. So now we're going to go in, for all intents and purposes, I not only quoted one part, but uh, this quote is complete for me. And I can go in and finalize this quote now. One of the first things you'll see, I've got some parts that, are missing price or lead time. We're going to flag that to you to make sure that there's not an error. I can hit acknowledge all warnings. And then this is a email template that we would build with you during the onboarding process. This is a demo follow-up. We've got repeat new customers. All of these email templates can look different. Within the email, they will receive a digital version of the quote. You can also opt in to submit a PDF as well. And to show you what that looks like, I'll click this preview, and this will take us to the digital quote. So within here, you'll see I've got my company logo here, company information, who it was requested by, quote details. Scrolling down, this is my first line item. You can choose or not choose to show this. Some of the buyers like to go in and have fun with it, but they can go in, they can view the part, they can close that down, and they can see what your manufacturer notes are. From there, if they want to check out digitally, they can go say, hey, yep, I want the 30. I know I've got to pay for the FAI inspection. I'm going to check out. And this gives them that Amazon-like buying experience where they can check out either via a credit card or a purchase order. And if you have a integration to your ERP system, this will act as a trigger point to import all of the data that we created in Paperless Parts, the BOMs, the routings, the individual times, the materials, any additional purchase components, and that will populate within your ERP system. That's it. Thank you guys for the time. I appreciate it.